What is up, guys? Winner Kills here, and welcome to a brand new deck profile video. Today I'm going to be bringing you guys an updated deck list of Earth machines. I know it's been a long time since I've covered this deck. I want to say maybe March, April, May. Around that time was the last time I was really heavily focusing on this deck, but my brother has recently stepped back into the competitive Yu-Gi-Oh scene, and in doing so, he's chosen to pick up this deck, which I think is a very good choice if you ask me, because of the success I've had with this deck in the past, and he's been enjoying it quite a bit. But you know, upon him picking the deck up, there was a new card released around the same time in Dawn of Majesty that I thought had really good synergy with this deck, and that card is the Iris Sword Soul. If you guys want to see more about that, I did make a test hand video recently showing off how this particular build of Earth Machine operates, and I would highly recommend you guys check it out. It is really interesting. I go into great detail and show off a lot of different plays, getting hand trapped, trying to OTK after you've successfully set up your turn 1 board, putting back your bricks, and more. So definitely check this out. The core playstyle of the deck hasn't changed a lot, but there's just like a lot of different options available now with this particular build. And I think most people are used to seeing this as more so like a trap heavy deck, you know, being a control sort of mid-range deck. That hasn't changed entirely. It's still definitely a mid-range aggro deck, but it definitely has some new things to it, and I can't wait to show it to you guys. So before we jump into the profile, I do want to mention a quick shout out to Imperium Duelist. They sell all sorts of amazing products, from binders, playmats, dice, and more, so definitely check them out at the link below. And again, don't forget to use my discount code. And if you guys are buying anything on TCG Player, maybe it's an Earth Machine deck for yourself, whatever it may be, please do not forget to use my affiliate link to TCG Player. Very, very easy to use. All you have to do is click the link, shop, and check out, all within the same tab. And once you guys check out, a small bit of the revenue from your purchase goes right back in the channel, and it helps out a ton for cards that you're already going to be buying at no extra cost to you guys. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the quick deck profile, and then we'll go into detail when I explain each individual card. Alright, so now we're going to go through each card one by one, and I'm going to explain in detail why I play each card. So, the first card we have here is Infinitrack Harvester. This is basically your Stratos of the deck, for lack of a better word. Basically says if it is normal or special summon, you can add one Infinitrack monster from your deck to your hand except itself. And then it has another on-field effect that says you can target one other machine monster you control. The levels of both that monster and this card become the combined original levels of those two monsters until the end of this turn. You can only use each effect of Infinitrack Harvester once per turn. So, again, it's your main Stratos for the deck. Can search you out your Brutal Dozer, your Trencher, your Drill, or your Tunneler. And it has a very nice level manipulation effect, which we often use quite a bit in this deck to pair with your level 7 Machina Fortress to make rank 9 plays. And it just overall helps to raise the ceiling of a lot of your plays. So definitely a card you need to play 3 of. This deck is kind of known as a 1-card combo deck, and this is one of those 1-card combo starters, so you definitely want to max out on it. Then next up, we have probably the best extender in the entire deck, especially on turn 1, and that is 3 Infinitrack. Why doesn't this come super rare? Brutal Dozer. I know that's quite a long name. But this is, again, like I said, one of the best extenders in the entire deck. Turn 1, and I'll talk about why specifically on turn 1. But it says, you contribute one Earth Machine monster as cost, special on this card from your hand in defense position. So one thing you can notice, all the level 5 Infinitracks we're playing have that same summoning condition, where they can summon themselves to the field by attributing another Earth Machine monster you control as cost. And this says if this card is special summoned from the hand, you can special summon one Infinitrack monster from your deck in defense position except itself, but negate its effects. Also, you cannot special summon monsters the rest of this turn except Earth Machine monsters. So that second effect has that restriction where you get locked in Earth Machines. That's the main reason you don't want to use it after turn 1 unless you absolutely have to get access to River Stormer or something, because a lot of the plays you can make on turn 3 give you access to like non-Earth Machine cards like Enter Blathnir, Dingirsu, Zeus, Gaia Charger, all cards you kind of need to help close out the game. And if you resolve Dozer on turn 3, you're locking yourself out of those very specific cards. But this card is always going to be searched off your Harvester or your Heavy Forward if you already have Harvester, essentially making your Harvester hand trap proof, right, if they decide to hit it with an Ash Veiler or Imperm. And then this is going to tribute that card off and go summon out another level 5, which is in most cases going to be another extender that can get to the grave by detaching, and then it accesses you the card in your extra deck that can basically search any card in your entire deck, and that is River Stormer. So playing 3 Brutal Dozer is definitely warranted. Next up, we have 2 copies of the Infinitrack Trencher. This card, again, is most of the time going to be your prime suspect to summon off your Dozer. And the reason being is because most of the time you go for your Dozer, you're getting that card off of your Harvester, and then you're going to be putting Harvester in the grave off of your Dozer. And once your Dozer summons your Trencher, you detach to search any Earth Machine off of your River Stormer. And then that puts Trencher in grave with a target. And even if you don't start with Harvester, you're most likely going to be linking off your River Stormer into a Goliath, which puts Dozer into the grave, which again gives you a live Trencher target to reborn out of the grave to continue extending. Now, that isn't always going to be the case. You're not always going to summon Trencher off of your Dozer. Sometimes you might summon Tunneler. But just to clarify, this guy basically, again, has the same summoning condition as Brutal Dozer and Tunneler. But then it says you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target a level 5 or lower Infinitrack monster in your graveyard except itself as cost. Special summon that target, special summon that monster in defense position. And then you can only use each effect once per turn. So only need 2 of these. You could argue for 1, but this card does come in clutch on turn 3, even turn 5 technically if you go first. So having a second copy is fantastic. Just because like you're not going to be able to recycle this card turn 1 off of your Tunneler, because you're always going to be banishing it in most cases unless you start with Drill, which is the only exception. So having a second copy for the grind game is very, very much needed. But Tunneler is the next card, one of the last Infinitracks we're playing. Same summoning condition as both Dozer and Trencher. But then it says you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 5 Earth Machine monsters in your graveyard as cost, shuffle them into the deck, then draw 2 cards. And the reason why I emphasize the word them is because let's say you use Tunneler, you target 3 Goliath, Ballista, and Anger Knuckle. If they perhaps DD Crow one of those cards, Tunneler will still shuffle them into the deck and draw you 2 cards, because this card is worded differently than that of Pot of Avarice, which says shuffle all 5 into the deck. So if one of those targets isn't there when it tries to resolve, it does not resolve. This card is worded in such a way where that even if one of the cards is getting shuffled into the deck, you'd still draw 2. This card also allows you, again, to recycle your whole extra deck engine. And it's very, very effective because in most cases in your standard combo, you're putting back extra deck monsters, which means instead of putting back 5 and drawing into 2, you're putting back 1 maybe into the main deck and digging 2 more cards deep, allowing you to see more hand traps or real traps if you're playing a build with actual trap cards in it like Strike or Torrential, or you can just draw into more extenders and again recycle your entire extra deck essentially for the next turn to do the same things over and over again, which is what gives this deck an insane grind game. And if you don't know already, you're probably wondering, how do you get Tunneler and Trencher back after you banish them? Well, we'll get to that in a little bit. Then next we play 1 copy of Infinitrack Anchor Drill. This is a card that I've experimented with in the past, playing multiple copies of. And the only reason I did try 2 is because there are some hands where, like, let's say you open this with Harvester, You don't need to use your Trencher Engrave that turn because you have this extra body on board. Or if you open it with the Dozer, it's just drill, summon Dozer, Dozer, summon from deck, and then again you have the extra body. So like, it is pretty okay when it resolves. The only problem is like, if it gets hand trapped, it is a little more susceptible, especially if you aren't opening a Harvester or a Dozer with it. And it kind of turns most of your normal combos into like 2-card combos, which I also find kind of unnecessary. But like, the real problem is just trying to find space for it in the main deck. So like, this is a card if you wanted to play 2 of, you could, but I don't think is entirely necessary. You're mainly searching this card as a follow-up in most cases. Then next up we have 3 Mach and a Metal Cruncher. This card is basically the same as your Harvester. Basically searches you any Earth Machine card in the deck, which is insane, and is again another one of your 12 starters for the deck, Harvester being one, Cruncher being the other. You can normal summon this card without tributing while you control no face-up cards, and then if you do that, its attack becomes 1800, and then you can reveal 3 Earth Machine monsters from your deck. Your opponent randomly adds one of them to your hand, and then you shuffle the rest back in the deck. So if you have 3 Dozer in your deck, it's a guaranteed search of Dozer plus a target on board. Or if you already have like a Fortress, you could set up for the rank 9 play by revealing the 3 Harvester. Or if you already have a Harvester in hand, you could reveal the double Fortress and a Dozer. And if you get the Fortress, you can do the rank 9 route if you really want to. But like, Harvester, just a fantastic normal summon. And late game too, this card could be dead, but it's just discard fodder for your Fortress. And speaking of Fortress, we play 2 copies of Fortress. This card is absolutely cracked. This is a card that I've been experimenting and talking to my brother about possibly playing a 3rd in the main deck, because the only way this card is ever dead is if you draw no other machine cards with it. And if you're not drawing any machine cards, like, you're already having a pretty bad turn to begin with. But basically, for those that don't know what this card does, I have the old text here, but I'll read it. It says you can discard machine type monsters whose total levels equal 8 or more monster or monsters who equal 8 or more to special summon this card from your hand or graveyard. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, target one monster or one card your opponent controls and destroy it. And when this face-up card you control is targeted by an opponent's monster effect, you can look at your opponent's hand and discard 1 card from it. Like, none of those effects are once per turn. More specifically, the summoning effect isn't once per turn, which is nuts. So like, it can just set up your grave with discard fodders for like Bullet, Trencher, and Citadel, and just give you a lot more like extension power. And it's searchable off of Redeployment, and it's also searchable off of River Stormer and Metal Cruncher too. So definitely a solid 2 of. And another thing for playing 2 is, like, I find if you only play 1, sometimes late game your redeployments can be dead if you don't have another copy of this. Then 1 Mach and a Citadel. This is one of the main reasons why, like, people like gravitate towards this deck quite a bit. I view it kind of like how Prank Kids has access to a Raigeki. Granted, they get a double Raigeki, but like, it's sort of the similar thought process here. We have a trap in our deck that can basically summon this card from the deck, or if we already have it in the grave ahead of time, if a Earth Machine monster we control is destroyed by battle or card effect, we can summon this card from the grave, and then quick effect while it's on the board, we can target a machine monster we control as cost, destroy that machine monster and all face-up monsters your opponent controls with attack less than or equal to it. So it can just target itself and then blow everything else on their field up with 3k or less. It just makes it a really difficult card for a lot of decks to play around, because Raigeki on the opponent's turn, as we see from Prank Kids, is pretty damn good. And then we have our level 10s, 1 Derek Crane, 1 Freight Train. I'm on 1 and 1. I've seen some people do 2 Derek Crane, 1 Bullet. I've seen some people do 3 Derek Crane and 1 Bullet. I get why this card can be used to chain block a lot of your really powerful normal summons or effects like Dozer, Harvester, basically any one of your Earth Machine monsters that has an effect that activates on summon that is vulnerable to Ash. You can chain block with Derek Crane, just because that's how the card mechanics work now in the TCG. And it's just a really good card. The only problem is it makes bad hands worse. And sometimes, like, this also doesn't protect against Valor Imperm, which are a little bit more popular right now, I think, than Ash. Even though Ash is still an incredible card, Valor Imperm are still going to make this chain blocking thing a little irrelevant. And the only reason I just play 1-1, the bullet's mandatory. The end phase recursion this card gives you is absolutely like absurd. If it's in the graveyard at the end of your turn, during the end phase, you can basically add back any machine monster in the grave except itself, which sets up a really cool resource loop with the next card we're playing. And then Derek Crane is really good because if you open Bullet, you can search Derek Crane, and then you end your normal combo with a number 81 Super Dora, which just makes your end board that much better. And then when it's detached from Xyz, you can pop a card on the field, which is very nice. Then we have one Ancient Gearbox. This card is kind of like the Garnet of the deck, although much like a lot of like the modern combo decks, you can combo with your Garnet if you see the right card. Like if you open up Box Harvester, there are combos to put it back. I showed that off in the most recent test stand video I made. If you guys want to see that, I'll leave a link to it up in the top right. And you can also do it if you open up with Box and Cruncher. Although the Box Cruncher opening is a little weaker for reasons, again, I explained in the test stand video. But again, you can still combo with a brick. But Gearbox does so much more than just being a brick. If it's added from your grave or deck to your hand, you get to add an Earth Machine monster with 500 attack and or defense, which searches you your Trencher, your Drill, and your Tunneler, or even Crab Crane if you decide to play that card. So the one of Ancient Gearbox is great. And then our hand trap lineup, I'll just go through these really quickly. 2 Ash Blossom, 2 Bell, 2 Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill. We'll come back to this card in a second. 2 Effect Veiler, 2 Nibiru the Primal Being, and 2 the Iris Sword Soul. I'll also come back to the Sword Soul in just a moment. Ash and Bell, really great generic hand traps, especially against decks like Drytron. Really good against Virtual World and Tri Brigade. Same thing can be said with Valor against like the Tri Brigade deck and also the Drytron deck. Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill is also not bad, especially going against like the Tri Brigade deck, going second. Being able to hit their Shurig, especially if they don't have something like Appaloosa, obviously, or going against Prank Kids. If they have the Battle Butler, you can use the Mourner. But the only reason I'm playing Mourner and the Veiler is because I'm playing Sword Soul. And then obviously Nibiru is just Nibiru, really, really strong card. All right, so now we'll go ahead and explain the Sword Soul. So the reason this card is in here is because we have a really good in-engine way to get this card out onto the field. And how do we get this card onto the field? Well, there needs to be a monster on the board who has its effects negated, and Bullet can summon a level 10 machine from your grave in defense with its effects negated. So this card is always going to be live, essentially acting as like a trap card or a hand trap during the opponent's turn, something that they worry about playing around because while this card is on the field, if your opponent special summons a monster, you get to activate one of the following effects based on where it was summoned from. If it was summoned from the hand, you get to summon a monster from the hand. So like if you have per se a Citadel stuck in your hand, you could just summon out the Citadel. Or if you have a Dozer, you can summon Dozer, trigger Dozer effect. If you have Cruncher, you can summon Cruncher, trigger Cruncher effect. If you have Harvester, you can do the same thing. There's a lot of cards that we can end on that if they do summon from hand and we want to use that effect, we can summon a monster from our hand and then also get a search off of it to have as a follow-up for next turn. If they summon from the deck, which is a very common thing nowadays, we get to draw 2 cards. Pot of Greed's pretty good, I heard. And then if they summon from the extra deck, we get to destroy one of those monsters that was special summoned from the extra deck. That one is probably not the best. The hand and deck one I feel is a little bit better. But overall, really a very strong card. And that's also why I'm playing Veiler and the Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill, is because these cards synergize with the Sword Soul, where we can, during, like if we go second, we open these cards in combination, we can Mourner something that puts a monster on board that has its effects negated, we can summon the Sword Soul. Same thing can be said with Veiler. Now, a lot of people might not want to play Ghost Mourner, but I feel like this card like isn't half bad, especially going up against the new Sword Soul archetype. I feel like I've heard that this card is not bad against it. So you could play it against that, especially for the upcoming meta after Burst of Destiny. Or if you really want to, you could play Impermanence. The only reason I'm not playing Impermanence is because I don't want to draw Imperm off of Sword Soul because it just kind of sits there in your hand and does nothing. So that explains the whole hand trap lineup and the Sword Soul engine. I do like it a lot in theory, and it does play very, very well. Then we have, for the spells, 3 Heavy Forward. Consider this like tanky for the deck, but it does a little bit more than that. While it's on the board, we can target a machine Xyz monster we control and either change its battle position or attach this card to it as material. So a lot of your Infinitrack links come out in defense. You can use this to put them in attack for damage, or if you need them to have a material on the spot, you can just attach it to them, which is really, really great on top of just being a tanky for Infinitracks. Then we have 3 redeployment. This card is absurd. And also, yeah, these are another one of your 12 starters and another one right here, bringing you up to the 12 total with the Harvester and the Cruncher. Discard a card, add 2 Machina monsters with different names from your deck to your hand, or if you discard a Machina card, you can add 2 Machina cards with different names from each other from your deck to your hand, which is absurd. So if you open up redeployment, the typical rank 9 combo is adding Cruncher and Fortress, and that allows you to do your full combo to draw 2 or 4 with Iron Draw. If you don't go the traditional rank 9 route, but you can make Enter Blather, and this is like one of the highest ceiling openings. Although I'm kind of gravitating more with this deck, like changing the playstyle, where if I open like redeployment and like heavy forward, Harvester, or Cruncher, I'm not going to start with the redeployment. I'm probably just going to hold the redeployment in case one of my cards gets hit with a negate or a hand trap, whatever it may be. Because this card is just so powerful, and only ever start with this if you absolutely have to, just because you want to have this as a backup because it gives you a lot of extension power. Then we're playing 2 Iron Draw. This is a card that I've tested in the past in Earth Machine, but never fully like committed to it. But I like this card a lot more in theory, just because like it's so easy to set up in the deck. Even after you resolve Tunneler, drawing into this lets you just draw into 2 more cards, or if you just like again draw this with standard combo, or even if you have the rank 10 combo, you can still make this live. Basically, for those that don't know what it does, if you control exactly 2 machine effect monsters and no other monsters, draw 2 cards. So like so easy to set up. If you have your 2 monsters on board, like it would be like Bullet and Goliath, or like Tunneler Goliath, you can Iron Draw, draw 2, and then link those into Knuckle, then resolve Tunneler, draw 2 more. Or if you end on your Knuckle and Leeb, you can play this, draw 2, end your turn, and then you've already drawn 2 previously off of your Tunneler. The only time this would conflict would be if you have your Sword Soul out, but there are ways to get rid of Sword Soul. You can just use Knuckle to send it off the board and then bring out a level 10 engrave, and then your Iron Draw is live. Yes, you can only summon 1 more time after this, but ideally you're seeing this card going first because most of the time you're going to be able to resolve it technically like a Pot of Avarice turn 1. So drawing into this card is not that likely. And then if you draw into it off Sword Soul, it just becomes like a Pot of Greed for next turn again. But I like this card a lot in theory. I think it's come up quite a bit. It's very, very easy to use. Like you don't have to change your combos like at all to be able to resolve it during your normal combo. Then 1 Call By just because it's Called by the Grave. Then 2 Overdrive. This card is a card a lot of people would probably play at 3, but I've come to realize over many months of playing this deck is that this card has the same issue that cards like EMR have in this deck, where like you need something on the field to be able to use the trap. Whereas Strike Torrential are a bit different in the fact where if you have just Strike Torrential and no starters, say no way to your engine, Strike Torrential are always live. Obviously, you know, Strike, you know, needs the 1500 life points, but I mean, obviously that goes without saying. But Torrential, if they're going to summon a monster, which is probably something that most decks are going to do, you know, Torrential becomes live. Overdrive has that similar problem that like a card like EMR has, which you need a monster on field to tribute with. This you need a machine monster. So if you draw this with no engine, it becomes dead. And technically you do play 5 copies of this in the deck because of redeployment. So I find playing 3 isn't always necessary. I know a lot of people might not agree with that essentially, but definitely try it out on your own and see how it goes. But now we'll jump into the extra deck real quick. We have the 3 Infinitrack Goliath. This card is so abusable in this deck. 1 non-link Infinitrack to go into it. You can summon as many times as you want in a turn. And then if it's sent to the graveyard, you can basically target an Xyz monster whose original type is machine, and then attach it to this card. And then basically, well, it attaches to any Xyz monster, but if its original type is machine, it gains the effect where it cannot be destroyed by card effects. And a lot of the Xyz monsters we play in the deck are machines, which means you can attach it to something like Zeus. And like if you end on Goliath Zeus, you can Zeus everything. The Goliath goes, Goliath attaches, and now you have a Zeus that cannot be destroyed by card effects, which makes it that much harder to deal with. Then we have one Ballista. This card basically just searches out your box, which gets you another extender. But it also has another effect, which can come up sometimes. It says you can target a spell trap you control and one face-up monster your opponent controls. As cost, destroy that card you control, and if you do, change that opponent's monster's attack and defense to 0 until the end of this turn. So it allows you to get over very, very high-tech monsters and possibly one-shot your opponent over them with Juggernaut, Lieb, and Gustav Max. 2 double-headed Anger Knuckle. I would say the second Knuckle is like your flex spot in the extra deck. You could play BLS Link, you could play Photon Lord. I mean, aside from that, I'm not really sure. You can play Girgi and X. Other than that, you could play Sky Palace Gangiridai. You could play the Sacred Tree Beast if you can make that live somehow turn 1, unless you have like an extra heavy forward. Yeah, those are probably like the only other cards that I recommend probably adding in. But this card is great. I play 2 just because it gives you more access to rank 10 plays. It has 2 effects. First and foremost, though, it cannot be used as link material. And then you can only use one of the following effects of Double-Headed Anger Knuckle per turn, and only once that turn. During the main phase, quick effect, you can send one monster from your hand or field to the graveyard, then target a level 10 machine monster in your graveyard, special summon in defense, but negate its effect. So that's what makes Sword Soul live, and also allows you to clear your Sword Soul off the field if you can't get rid of it otherwise. And then if this card's in your graveyard, you can send any card from your hand or field to the graveyard, special summon this card. So just really, really solid card on the field and in the grave. Then for Xyz, we'll start with the smallest ones first. We have your River Stormer, which is basically your Stratos in the extra deck. 2 level 5s, you can detach material, and then take an Earth Machine monster from your deck and either add it to your hand or send it to the grave. So you can dump your Citadel off this, you could add your Bullet, or you can add your Derek Crane if you already have Bullet. And then if it's in the grave, you contribute a Machine Link monster's cost, especially on this card in defense position. All of the Infinitrack Xyz monsters has that effect, on top of another effect that says when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can attach that monster to this card as material. So whatever it kills just gets attached to it for more Xyz fodder, or making a Zeus or something. Whatever you need. Gaia Dragon the Thunder Charger. This card is incredible in this deck because a lot of times on your second turn or turn 3, you're going to be bringing this card back out off of its own effects, but it's kind of stuck there in defense if you don't have heavy forward. But playing Gaia Charger allows you to turn it into a 2600 Piercer, which then turns into a 2 material Zeus, which can be the difference between winning and losing that turn. Then we play one Dingirsu because we play Drill and Ancient Gearbox. Drill can summon the box. Drill targets box. You have 2 level 8s. Go into this or either Photon Lord if you play it. The non-target send is extremely good. Outs basically all cards in the game, even the ones that, you know, like cards that say they can't be targeted. Doesn't target. Cards that say they can't be destroyed by card effects. Doesn't destroy. Really, really solid card. And then if it's something, you can also either, attach a Banished Machine monster to his material. So if they have nothing to send, you can reattach from your Banished Trenchers or Tunnelers to it, and then make a Zeus on top of this, which is really nice. And that gives you quick access to detach those cards that you had, on it as material. Enter Blathnir. This card can be made turn 1 off of the redeployment combo. Basically non-target banishing from either 1 card from the hand, 1 card from their grave, 1 card from their field, or 1 card off the top of their deck. So very, very versatile card. And outs a lot of problematic cards too. Then Earth Slicer. This is the card that you can make going second. Basically, you can attach any number of materials and then destroy that many cards on the field. It does target, unfortunately, but, beggars can't be choosers, I guess. And then it says if this card in the graveyard, tribute a Machine Link, summon it back in defense. Same thing with River Stormer. And then if it destroys monster by battle, attach it to his material. Then you play the rank 10 package, which consists of the Super Dora, the Gustav Max, and the Juggernaut Lieb. Usually make this card turn 1 if you open any of your 1-card starters, Harvester, Heavy Forward, Cruncher, or Redeployment, plus any level 10 like your Bullet or your Derek Crane. You can end on this, which just makes your end board that much more difficult to get over. And going second, you can make Gustav detach to burn for 2k, and make this detach to go up to 6k, and poke over something for game or attack directly. So you gotta play that engine. It just allows you to close games so easily. Then 1 Divine Arsenal AA Zeus. This card is just, it's Zeus. This card is unfair. The fact that we can play it in this deck, like, you kind of got to play it, right? Because Zeus is just Zeus. So yeah, that is it for the extra deck. And the only other thing I wanted to talk about, is if you guys wanted to play the traditional trap build, like I played in the past with Strike Torrential. Obviously, you just drop the hand traps, except for maybe 3 Ash and 2 Nibiru, and then throw in your triple Strike, triple Torrential, and maybe a Harpy's Feather Duster or main deck Twin or Cosmic, whatever you want. And then the build is pretty much standard like it was before, but I wanted to showcase to you guys this sort of experimental list. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below, and if you guys want to see more of my content, click on one of the videos popping up in the bottom of the screen right now. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. And last but not least, a huge shout out goes to our Divine level channel members, and they are Cadillacs 84, Pony Stark, and Keith Sidgers. Thank you guys so much for your extremely generous support of this channel.